I'm Yulin Hswen, Associate Editor of JAMA and JAMA Plus AI, and you are listening to JAMA Plus AI Conversations. My guest today is Dr. Cecilia Lee, an ophthalmologist and professor of ophthalmology and visual science at Washington University, St. Louis. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi.
Hi. So, you're a professor of ophthalmology and visual sciences. So, can you tell our listeners what that entails?
Thank you. So, as a professor of ophthalmology and visual sciences, it really means that our department has a group of clinicians, ophthalmologists, and then also visual sciences researchers. So, we have a range of medical doctors and then also PhDs, and then we all function as a team in terms of delivering clinical care, research, education. So, for myself specifically, clinically, I care for patients with retinal diseases such as age-related macular degeneration or AMD or diabetic retinopathy, and I do cataract surgeries. But I'm a clinician scientist, so most of my time is spent in doing research. And my research is focused on really working with the multidisciplinary teams to use imaging, clinical epidemiology, or big data and AI to study how the eye can be used to study systemic and brain health.
Can you tell me some of the kind of research studies that you've done? You have some really cool data sets, and you're now in this field of AI and imaging, which is just growing immensely. Can you talk to us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so then I think I can kind of summarize the type of research that our lab does as oculomics. So, oculomics is really using the eye as a window into overall health. And then that became as a real potential reality with the advent of artificial intelligence and deep learning in which we are not only able to interpret all this imaging data to the level that our eyes cannot see, but then also linking the eye data to all the systemic data. So we are able to really uncover these hidden markers from retinal imaging and then the eye health.
Can you describe in detail, like, what is it about the eye and what areas the eye that are really allowing you to be able to do this type of diagnostics and really being able to, pun intended, see into the future, really?
I feel very fortunate to have been in this field. I really do think that I really lucked out in choosing specialty. So the eye is actually part of the brain. So during our embryologic development, within the first 3 weeks, the eye develops like kind of like comes out of the forebrain as an outpouching. And actual the retina is the neural tissue that is shared with the brain. So you can imagine the eyeball and the brain as twins separated at birth, but then also they are exposed to the same markers, same genes, right? And then same upbringing, let's say. So then obviously there are a lot of similarities, especially in terms of the neurons and then also vasculature. So because they are essentially the same tissue to begin with, we can learn a lot about the brain just by understanding the eye. So that's one kind of the natural connection that we can easily make. What is remarkable of ophthalmology is retinal imaging. As you are familiar, retinal imaging, such as optical coherence tomography or OCT, you can get that in a few seconds, right? Everybody goes to optometry or ophthalmology clinic, and then you don't even need to be dilated, and you get this amazing microscopic images of your retina without any invasive or any, it's very affordable and scalable. So the fact that we can really visualize the retina to the level of capillaries, it enables us to examine the vascular health to an unprecedented detail. This is the reason why we are able to use just fundus photos or just the picture photos of the retina to predict who's going to have myocardial infarction or stroke, all these kind of cardiovascular outcomes just based on the retinal imaging.
I mean, that's so fascinating. It also sounds really complex. Can you tell us what are you seeing as the biggest barriers right now? I mean, AI is so advanced, is doing so much, but Is it the images that are the issue? Is it the data collection? Is it diversity? Or is it the AI models? Is it just storage capacity?
There is so much potential, and I think there are limitations. I really do think that these are real. I just talked about all this like fancy retinal imaging, right? It's ubiquitous. It can characterize to amazing details. I mean, to the level of capillaries, we're talking about micron size details, but all these exciting devices, they don't talk to each other. So we don't have a way of storing, just piling all the images or different protocols together. I think the field of radiology went into this trouble, many decades ago, right? All these MRI images not talking to each other. Same thing here in ophthalmology. So that's one. So the lack of standardization is a huge problem. And I think you mentioned diversity, and we definitely do need stronger validation across diverse populations. And that's huge in terms of training and validating AI models that we want to deploy. Also, another big issue is that there is a big discrepancy between where the research is headed versus where is being implemented. So there's this huge lack in terms of what we are able to show in research, but then whether that could be implemented downstream in routine clinical practice, we're many years before that happens. So I think there needs to be more development of infrastructure, support, and then implementation practices.
Implementation is so challenging. Like you said, from like a surface level point of view, I mean, it's so fascinating to me that these images are so routinely and quote unquote easily collected, right? You go to the ophthalmologist, they, can take a picture of your eye there, it's routinely done. And yet, where do those images go? I don't know if those ever get kind of analyzed, right? Because it might not be in a data set. Can you tell me about your studies and building those type of data sets, and then how do you go about doing that through your studies? And then also ensuring that the population is diverse, because even when we're working on our study, I look at the data sets and it doesn't give a full breadth of the different populations. And I do believe that we can see the phenotype on the outside, and yet we still don't believe there's a phenotypic kind of difference on the inside, right? In terms of we have different colored eyes. How could that not necessarily be different for different populations? So it's a challenge.
Yeah, so I think especially at this stage when we are, trying to train AI models, we need data sets that are large. So I think there are both like technical challenge and ethical challenge. So one is that when we collect data, they all need to be collected consistently and then also of high quality and standardized. What I mentioned about the challenge of lack of standardization in pushing this field forward. And then also they need to be organized so that is quote unquote AI ready for sharing. But you mentioned about how do we make sure that these data sets are ethical? Meaning, I think we need to make sure that our data set represents diverse populations so that the models that we build are fair and generalizable. And sometimes it's really hard. It means that we really need to think of the population that will be using these tools from the beginning. So at the design stage, if we can involve communities or community partners at the design stage, I think that would be helpful in building trust and then also making sure that the models that we build will actually be useful, that are actually what they're looking for. And again, as in the person that's in academia, there's always desire to publish the first paper, but there's not much appetite in saying, oh, I was able to validate the model who was created by somebody else. But I think that is equally, if not even more important, to validate existing models or already published models into different populations so that we can actually say that, yes, this is useful for this use cases. And then that will actually help towards implementation and then buy-in from the clinicians.
I see that there's this fruitful future that we might have with it. I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball of, do you think that there will be a point where we're going to use any of the smartphone type of technology? Have you seen any cool tools out there that are doing that, or anything that you're seeing in the future to help this type of research area, especially any AI tools that you just spoke about where, okay, we need to validate this. Are there any cool ones that you think, yes, I want to test this one?
Well, I absolutely think that there will be newer tools and then especially those like non-invasive data collection modalities. Using like cell phones is a great example, right? Can you take a picture? Speech is another good example, right? There's a lot of initiative going on to use a speech or voice as a biomarker of health or even predicting who's going to develop Alzheimer's or dementia. So I think AI is going to make our first existing imaging tools much more powerful because it's going to enable automated measurements right away. But then also, it's going to help us to link that to systemic risk information from those routine scans. Second, because of all these abilities to interpret those somewhat questionable quality or varying quality images, I think there will be a lot more efforts going into how can we collect more sensitive but then highly reliable data from non-invasive, like scalable devices such as phone or other digital technology.
Well, I find it so fascinating. We're always thinking, how do we get more invasive data with remaining private and ethical? And yet, I know so many people, including myself, that have now started to give their data to ChatGPT, for instance, right? And uploading all their information. And for some reason, people are much more hesitant to give that into research, but large companies, we give our data all the time to them.
I totally agree. And I think because of this AI Ready consortium and the Bridge to AI program, I learned a lot from bioethicists in terms of perspective of bioethicists in terms of really protecting the participants' security and privacy, and the perspective of data scientists really wanting more openness, like open data science, so that they can actually do discovery work that in turn will benefit overall society. Of course, we do need to do our best to really safeguard our data and give oversight of how data are used. That's an important piece.
What was the AI program that you're talking about?
Oh, the AI Ready project. So that's the data generation project that was funded as a Boost to AI program. We were one of the four funded programs, and this is to understand salutogenesis in type 2 diabetes. This is a unique funding program where our purpose of AI Ready project was really to generate data that is AI ready. And then it really did not require any hypothesis. Actually, they wanted this data set to be hypothesis agnostic. It wanted to be as broad as possible to enable any AI model development downstream for other researchers. So we are collecting a multimodal data set that is balanced in type 2 diabetes severity. So one quarter is normal, one quarter is pre-diabetic or diet control diabetic, one quarter is medication dependent, and then one quarter of insulin dependent. So we're balancing the data sets. We have just released our year 3 data set that has about 2,200 people, and it's about 4 terabytes of data. And you can download that data. It has a lot of information. And then the way we wanted to safeguard the data set as much as possible were using this, what we call Swiss cheese example or model, where we know that there's no one method that can guarantee the safety or privacy of participants. So, one, we verify the person's identity. So you have to use the real name and then your academic credentials. And second, we also created a specific health license where the license specifically prohibits any attempt to re-identify any participants or any attempt to harm in any way a specific population. And then also we watermark each data set. When they get the data, there's a little bit of perturbation in the data set so that if this person leaks the data somewhere, then we are able to identify that person. And then also on the consent, we are very specific on what data will be available in publicly accessible but registered access data set as opposed to control data access data set. We have done those type of methods to enable really easy access but then also responsible and trustworthy access system where we ask for the companies to know what the license allows, and then for the individual researchers to know that they won't be doing any re-identification or any harming of any vulnerable population.
I love this project. I love the title, AI Ready. And I wish that there was more projects like this where this wants to be hypothesis ready. We want to be able to have the data to be able to generate as much research and studies in that area because the importance of the data is essential. So you've done so much. What do you want to do next in terms of the next few years? And what do you hope to see that this research brings?
Well, one of the big interests is Alzheimer's. I mentioned the brain and eye connection. Sorry, I kind of digressed into other AI projects, but one of the main emphasis and our main interest is really finding retinal related biomarkers in predicting cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, and other dementia. And one of the studies that we have ongoing is eye adult changes in thought or ACT study. That is a study that is happening in metropolitan Seattle area. They started in 1994. They were all members of Kaiser Permanente Washington, which used to be Group Health by then. They are 65 or older. They come in, they are cognitively normal. Every 2 years, they get cognitive testing until they fall below threshold, and then they get evaluated and diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia-related diagnosis. And now we added retinal imaging components, so we call it IACT, and then it started about 4 years ago, and we have over 850 participants that are being prospectively followed. So I think one of the big challenges in using AI, because we're so dependent on large data sets, we end up using a lot of retrospective data, right? Because it's readily available. And then it happens to be cross-sectional a lot of times. So I do think that it's really important to have prospective cohort studies that really enable follow-up of like normal participants, and then they develop dementia so that we actually understand at what time point these promising retinal biomarkers or any other biomarkers actually become identifiable. I mentioned validation earlier, the need for validation. There are a lot of studies that have looked at potential AI retinal biomarkers of Alzheimer's disease. Can we actually validate that in this specific cohort? Or can we generate hypothesis and large data set, but then actually validate in a smaller, more controlled and more research quality data collection sites? So I think those kind of movements are important. What I am hoping is that I really want to leverage big data and AI tools to better understand our health and aging. And that the major markers of healthy aging is really neurodegenerative, right? Such as Alzheimer's or cardiovascular or metabolic, because that really entails a lot of diseases that impact our aging. So I am really hoping to integrate retinal imaging into these non-eye data as much as possible to enable that kind of future discoveries. So retinal imaging is happening in adult changes in thought study. Retinal imaging is happening in CDC NHANES survey currently. I'm involved in several Alzheimer's disease research centers. And then they are doing pilot study in terms of integrating retinal imaging into their routine data collection protocols. So there are a lot of initiatives that are happening. And I think when all the teams, very multidisciplinary teams come together, we will be able to analyze and really find these hidden links between the eye and really prevalent diseases in future. One thing that I do want to highlight is that nobody has all the expertise that we need. Nobody has all the data that we need to accomplish this type of complex project. But it is really going to change the way we not only treat our patients in clinic, but I think it's really going to change how we look at not only diseases, but our overall health.
I think so too. And I think there's no way people can kind of be experts in everything. You really need experts to kind of come together on really build on this vision. I think this area, though, really, if I were to say this is the area to watch, it would be this one. I don't think that we had the capabilities. I don't think we had the AI capabilities before to do it. And I think we do now. I think it's going to be one of those things where is the, what I always say too, is like computational power people. is try sending an image, a large image. Come on, it's difficult. And data, data storage and all that. I hope that catches up. I think that's what we really need too, right? And then all the other technologies like the kind of smartphone stuff. But I think it's that ability to have the same kind of quality image, really high resolution, which also scares me because then will I have to adapt those models to a new type of resolution and a new type of vasculature that I didn't see before because microns, you can see that much more detail for it. I think we talked about that, but that's another story, and
Right.
that's another barrier that we can cross when we get there. But thank you so much for being here and for this wonderful conversation, and it was great to have you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This was a pleasure.
I'm Yulin Hswen, Associate Editor at JAMA and JAMA Plus AI, and I've been speaking with Dr. Cecilia Lee. You can find a link to the article in this episode's description, and for more content like this, please visit our new JAMA Plus AI channel at jamaa.org. To follow this and other JAMA Network podcasts, please visit us online at jamanetworkaudio.com or search for the JAMA Network wherever you get your podcasts. This episode was produced by Daniel Musisi at the JAMA Network. Thanks for listening.
This content is protected by copyright by the American Medical Association with all rights reserved, including those for text and data mining, AI training, and similar technologies.